morning and welcome to Eliot Unitarian Chapel. Eliot Unitarian Let me start that again. Eliot Unitarian Chapel is a liberal religious community of spiritual seekers. We welcome you all in the fullness of your age, race, ethnicity, your ways of being in body and mind, your gender expression, sexual orientation, and religious background. Our core values are freedom, reason, respect, and love. Summers are special at Eliot, as our worship services primarily feature pulpit guests or lay-led services until we return to our regular Sunday programming after Labor Day. I am Pam Triplett, a child of Eliot founders, and together with feather child Trina Parisi, who's also a child of founders. She's a little older than me, though. We are pleased you have joined us for our Growing Up at Eliot service this morning. We have 7 of us to give some brief recollections about growing up here, and I think you will enjoy it. Whether you are here inside the church or joining us online, we are united as one community. If you are visiting for the first time, a special welcome to you. There are many ways for you to spend your morning, and we are happy you've chosen to be with us. I hope that today's message speaks to you and that we will see you back for more. If you're here in person and you're new, we'd like to stay in touch with you. Please fill out a guest form that you received on your way in and complete both sides if you have children. If you didn't get a form, please pick up one after the service. And if you're visiting online, let us know you're here by emailing welcome@eliotchapel.org so that we can reach out to you and personally welcome you. After the service, we hope you'll join us in coffee hour in Adams Hall. Go out these doors and to your left. If you're new or newish and you want us to know that, take a blue cup and we'll be sure to talk to you. If you're old or oldish, be sure to talk to the people with blue cups. In the Unitarian tradition, we light our chalice on Sunday mornings. This morning, we light our chalice for childhood. Specifically, we light it for the childhood that 7 of us experienced here at Eliot. The experiences we each had in this place helped shape us into who we are today. And we all identify as Unitarians even still. We light our chalice in thanks. All right. What's next? Opening words. Oh my gosh, I got the best opening words, you guys. I was reading the funnies this morning because it is necessary for me to do that in order to start my day properly. And Doonesbury is our opening words. And I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the Reverend. Is it Rick? Anyway, it's the Reverend and he's talking to another man. So I overheard this couple in front of the rectory today. They were reading the sign where I post the topic of Sunday's sermon and the scripture that inspired it. Today's was Deuteronomy 15-11. You shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in your land. So the guy points to our church sign, and know what he says? I can't imagine. Liberal Grooming Center. Sounds about right. The opening hymn is number 38, Morning Has Broken. Eliot and I and Trina, I know, all remember singing this about every Sunday. I hope we enjoy singing it together.
Like the first bird.
in-person reading of our church covenant. It is printed in your order service. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be, to listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Fleming. I am the current chair of the Board of Trustees. And on behalf of the board, I want to express our deep gratitude to all the staff. Their hard work, their dedication, their love for Eliot has been so appreciated over the years. So thank you so much to the staff.
So I believe Adam and Debbie are here. I don't know if, Christy, is Debbie here? And Camille, would Christy and Adam please come forward? We're going to thank each of the staff members who have been most impacted by our restructuring that's taking place. All right. Adam is our music director, and he will be continuing as our choir director, so we will still have him, but we will be seeing less of him. But in the music director role, Adam was everything music, that everything you have ever heard in this congregation since he began with us during the pandemic, as did his predecessor. And we're so thankful when you came. You started when we were worshiping outside on 222, that property that became our sanctuary for 3 months. And Adam stepped into that situation, a challenging way to start a job when you can't yet meet your choir directors, your choir members face to face. So it was a challenging way to start. And Adam, you stepped into that role. You have brought so much beauty, your voice, your instrumentals, the way you built relationships with the choir who love you, do you not? And the professionalism and we have been truly blessed by your presence. So thank you, Adam. And Christy, you have been with us a long time. You were a member here at this chapel. You were married on this chancel. You served as our assistant director of religious education for many, many years. Then you also began serving as our administrative assistant in the front office. And any of you who have ever served on committees in this congregation will know how central Christy was to you being able to do the work that you do. Christy has often been the first voice that anyone heard if they were calling about our congregation and interested, and she welcomed every one of them. She's done more photocopying, printing, sending messages, connecting people. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There is very little in this congregation that has not been touched by Christy's presence. I have a letter of thanks to you from Scott, with whom you served in the DRE function for several years. From Scott. In December 2008, the ink wasn't dry on my new employee paperwork when I received a "Welcome to Eliot" email from Christy Lee. That interaction began an RE partnership which would last until the spring of 2022, and a collegial relationship that concludes this week. Over these years, we became not only colleagues, but close friends. We used to joke that we may or may not be the best RE staff, but we would have the most fun. And fun we did for many years. From the moment I met Christy, I knew I was lucky to have her as a ministry partner. She took pride in doing her best to make sure everyone at Eliot felt cared for and welcome, especially children and families. Halloween was always a special opportunity to gather for fall fellowship and community, and Christy took particular joy in ensuring the room was decorated and festive, and food and activities in abundance. Seldom did a holiday go by when children didn't go home with a specially created goodie bag from Miss Christy. Nothing brought Christy more joy than seeing Eliot children happy. Nobody was quicker or more eager to extend a welcome to our new children and families. And when COVID forced a change in programming, Christy eagerly worked to make online community available for children each Sunday and embraced the new challenge of outdoor, off-site RE experiences for children and families. But of all the things for which I'm grateful, perhaps one thing stands above the rest. Christy's skill set and compassions complemented mine, and vice versa. Together, we were able to utilize our respective gifts and strengths in service to this community. Not perfectly, of course, but always with love and joy for Eliot children and youth. I believe we were each the best versions of ourselves in partnership with the other. I offer these words from a place of both celebration and grief. We are gathered today to celebrate 15-plus years of dedication and service to the Eliot community, and Christy's contributions most deservedly should be celebrated. My heart, though, is sad today. This is a loss I feel deeply on both a personal and professional level. That, perhaps as much as anything, indicates the measure of her impact on my life and how much I have valued her partnership and collegiality over so many years. In my closing remarks, nothing feels quite adequate. I am reminded, though, of a visit years ago with my father to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, where I encountered one of my all-time favorite quotes. "A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives," by Jackie Robinson. Thank you, Christy, for your tireless efforts over the years to make such a positive impact on those in this community. My heart breaks and my cup truly overflows. Let us thank Christy for her years of service.
A goodbye wouldn't be anything without words from me. So on this day where we celebrate growing up at Eliot, which is quite appropriate for my family because I came into this community in 1995 when I met my husband and got married right here on this beautiful chancel. And my husband grew up here at Eliot, my children grew up here at Eliot. In a way, I kind of feel I grew into myself here at Eliot. And I feel like I have been blessed. If I had just even a little bit of an ounce of helping build the structure of UUs that have graced these doors, these youth and children that have come by my way in the last 15 years. And from the front office perspective, I value each and every one of you so very much and the relationships that I have built with you. And thank you. And please be kind to each other.
While Debbie and Camille aren't here, Debbie is our communications specialist and Camille is our director of finance and operations. Debbie always watches the service afterwards because she's the one that gets it ready for YouTube. And Debbie, when we hit the pandemic, Debbie became the key to our congregational life continuing. She is the one that built all of those worship services that we watched, that we put together for this congregation online. She organized everything, and she was stellar. but she served us before the pandemic. Every written thing you see, the order of service, This Week at Eliot, when we had a monthly newsletter, all the communications, the brochures, the stewardship materials, she creates all of that. And so she really is a core component of this congregation. And since she will be watching, why don't we give her a round of applause? Look at the camera right back there. And also Camille Novak, who serves as our Director of Finance and Operations. She's the reason the lights are on. We've got air conditioning. The bills are paid. The staff are paid. The grounds. I mean, everything about this building and everything about our finances, that has been Camille's work, and she has served us incredibly well. So let us also give her a round of applause. Now, by the end of the week, we should be able to share with you what our staff team looks like. All the staff were eligible to apply for the new positions, and we will be letting you know that as soon as it is finalized. But thank you very much. We appreciate your time today. And there is a staff fund of appreciation. There's a jar at each door, and please do enjoy the sheet cake that we have to celebrate them.
So a couple months ago, my friend Trina says to me, hey, if I did a summer service based on charter child recollections, would you talk? I said, sure. Now, somehow that morphed into me being in charge with her. And I mentioned to her that I only lived here as a child for 10 years, and my family moved to Illinois. But nevertheless, we were able to find some other charter children, Eliot Ranney, Michael Hennon, and Steve Tanaka, as well as Beth Curtis, some younger people, just so you're not too bored with us old folks. And I believe that Mel Priest is not well today, and so I'm sorry. Oh, she is? Are you going to go? Oh, good. I'm so happy. I heard she had a bad incident with a taco. We are so grateful to all of those people, to Eliot and to Mel for playing, and to everybody for speaking and for agreeing to keep their talks short. It is so much easier to give a long talk than a short talk. With the talent we have here, I hope you enjoy the day. I'm going to go first, because I have the shortest one, probably. I started my life as an in vitro Unitarian. My mother, Julie Triplett, was pregnant with me when she and my dad, George Triplett, moved to St. Louis in 1957. We then lived in Kirkwood until 1968 when we moved away to Central Illinois. But I remember Eliot Chapel. I remember the YMCA where RE was held while adults had services here in this building. I remember attending some of the services in this building, especially Flower Sunday and Christmas Eve, my favorites. On Christmas Eve, everyone had a candle just like now, and my brother Jim and I would try to keep our candles lit in the car all the way home. It was a different time. I remember people. My folks were good friends with Betty Marlowe, and sometimes I played with Trina, even though she was older. I remember the Rannies, all those boys I did not appreciate at the time. And the Wells. The Durbins were special friends of my folks. Mary Lou and Mom taught in the nursery school, which Mom had founded with Mary Lou Martin. Mary Lou Durbin played the big organ that was up here in the chancel, a huge instrument. She was a tiny lady, those of you who remember Mary Lou. But she could play it, and she could do the feet and everything. I was so impressed by that. Mary Lou also played the harp, and she had one at her house and sometimes brought it to church. Jim Durbin and my dad both loved Bergfried. My family spent a lot of time at Bergfried. I remember Julia Lingenfelder and Doris Shreve. They would invite me into their home where it seemed like they were usually baking something when we were out there. I have a very specific memory of helping them make candied orange and lemon peel. They were lovely ladies. Later, they dedicated, well, I guess at that time, they had already given Bergfried to the church. I went to Robinson School through 4th grade. No one else from Eliot was in my class. The children would ask what church we attended. After experiencing their bewildering responses when I said Unitarian, I changed my answer. I said Presbyterian. That way I didn't have to explain anything. But I was definitely Unitarian. One summer when I was 10 or 11, we spent the summer in Aspen where my dad had a fellowship. Jim and I played with kids in our neighboring apartment who were about our same age. One day, the kids were talking about Bible stories, specifically Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark. I listened for a while to their discussion in which they took the stories as, well, gospel. I looked at them and said, "You don't really believe that, do you?" I am not sure that those children were allowed to play with us after that.
Good morning. My name is Steve Tanaka, and these are a few of my early childhood Eliot memories. My wife, Lynette, and I attended the Community of Christ Church, which is just up the street from here, a couple blocks, for about 20 years before coming to Eliot about 15 years ago. But before all that, I attended Eliot Chapel as a child, as part of one of the early Eliot Chapel member families, the family of Joe and Nikki Tanaka, who some of you may remember. So here are a few of my memories. But first, a little disclaimer. What is a memory? To me, a memory is neither fact nor fiction. It's neither right nor wrong. So I don't claim this to be accurate. It's just what I remember. My very first memory of Eliot Chapel actually occurs over 60 years ago, before we even had this building. I was about 4 years old then. A few of the first families, as I call them, were meeting informally at various places around town. And I remember my father, Joe Tanaka, was pushing around some wooden folding chairs, getting ready for a church service in what I think was the lobby of the Grace Episcopal Church, which is just down Argonne this way. I remember the square wooden frame windows and the angled shape of their lobby, which you can still see today from the road. And another very early memory I have is seeing and hearing Webster Kitchell. Webster was one of Eliot's first ministers. I see him now in a flowing black robe. He seemed to fly wherever he went. He's moving across this very stage. And as I recall, Webster Kitchell was a very flamboyant man that had a beard and mustache and long, flowing, curly hair, even before it was popular. And now here are a few more of my early childhood memories of Eliot Chapel. I remember loving that balcony up there, and I still do. You'll see me up there every once in a while. And I remember my mother, Nikki Tanaka, told me that the balcony is where the slaves used to sit, which is a very sobering thought. I also remember my mother telling me that this church was built in the shape of a cross. This is the head, and these vestibules were being the arms. She also said that the metal ornament on top of the spire, which some of you may see, was also designed to convey the image of a cross from various viewing angles, so you might take a look at that. I remember this vestibule. This, believe it or not, used to be a small store, basically a weekly garage sale. They even had a small tray of tiny toys that I remember that were only 1 penny. So I used to love to visit that small store. I also remember, if you look to the sides, these stained glass windows used to be very much more traditional in their design. They had deep red and blue hues with all those religiously themed scenes. I remember my father, Joe Tanaka, he built a model of this bay window, this beautiful bay window that used to not be here when I was a child. He built the model to help raise funds for its construction. And I also do remember being in Eliot Chapel Sunday School with a few of my friends whom you're going to hear speak tonight or today. And lastly, I want to just mention that I remember singing Morning Has Broken to be in every church service for decades. And now in closing, I hope you too will someday cherish your Eliot memories. And maybe, just maybe, a few of my Eliot memories will now become part of your Eliot memories. Thank you.
My mother signed as a charter member in 1959 with this name, Mrs. Mansell Hennon, parenthesis, Betty. It says a lot about our life as a post-war family that she would use the title and then my father's first name, and then her first name. My mother was joining this church because, in spite of everything that was a hardship for her, she had hoped that Eliot Chapel would be a source of encouragement and support for her 3 children. She signed the membership book for all of us, even Dad, who didn't sign until 1961. Families still join Eliot Chapel for their children, especially women in families, and then they stay for themselves. 5 years before she signed, our family became part of what was then called the County Forum. It was crafted out of the families who lived way out in the county who were part of the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis. The religious education classes were overflowing there with baby boom kids like me. My earliest memory of our meeting as a county forum fellowship was in the Arthur Murray Dance Studio in downtown Webster Groves in 1954. I was 5 years old. We moved away from St. Louis when I was 7, but then returned in 1967. I remember RE classes in the annex to the White House at the end of Washington Street in Kirkwood. I remember us meeting later in the Kirkwood YMCA. Julie Triplett was my RE director. We would paste beans on boards, making a map of Palestine. We would read stories from a book called Martin and Judy, which, thank you, Julie, for giving this to me. And we would learn about the church across the street. Our family drove out Manchester Road in our blue Rambler station wagon with a push-button dashboard shifting and turn onto Taylor to go to church. I was 10 when Betty Hennon, Mrs. Betty Hennon, signed as a charter member of the church on October 5th, 1959, one of 119 members to do so. My mother died 3 years later. On September 26, 1962. The first membership book, on display under glass out in the hallway here, records that she was the third one to die in our church. There are only 2 of our founders who are still alive today, Julie Triplett and Genevieve Turner. My father joined in 1961 because he knew my mother had breast cancer and the diagnosis was bleak. Our family was an integral part of the church community because my mother made it so. She went to Women's Alliance. She arranged circle suppers in our home. Before she died, 98 members of Eliot Chapel voted on January 28, 1962, to buy this building from Grace Episcopal Church, erected in 1849, for the grand sum of $25,000. The vote in favor of purchase, instead of building a new building at Ballas and Darty Ferry, was 57 for and 40 against. One of the many, many contentious decisions our church has had to make. Mrs. Betty Hennon's life was full of hardship. She, our family, endured abuse, but she never gave up hope that the lives of her children will be better than hers. She thought Eliot Chapel could help make that so. After her death, I began to go to First Unitarian Church of St. Louis because all my friends here at this church belonged to the disgruntled group who wanted to build instead of buy. But it was my mother's encouragement that started it all. At First Church, I became involved in the youth group, LRY. I made lifelong friends there and had an advisor who encouraged me to choose to be a parish minister. I began a long, long journey that ended up back where I had come from, becoming a UU minister, coming back to St. Louis and signing the then current membership book 40 years after my mother, and became a hospice chaplain and then worked for Eliot Chapel as a minister of pastoral care for 3 years. In retirement, I'm still part of this community of beloveds. Eliot Chapel remains a touchstone in my life, one that continues to keep hope, encouragement, and love alive in the midst of hopelessness, pain, suffering, and loss. So thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Betty Hennon.
Hello again. So, being raised UU was definitely a trip. There were a lot of aspects of my experience growing up here that I celebrate and appreciate every day, but I had to work really hard to narrow down for the sake of not keeping you here today, all day. So I'm gonna focus on one of the biggest things, which is the safety and community I felt growing up here. A lot of the members who have been here throughout my life may remember me speaking during youth services about how safe and welcome I feel here as I've grown with my faith and my family. And I've learned even more deeply how true that is and why my upbringing in the sanctuary matters so much to me. As a queer person, I've spoken many times with other people within my community about our experiences growing up. I oftentimes find myself speaking with people who are no contact with their family or have very complicated and tenuous relationships with them due to their coming out. Even if their families are accepting, a lot of my non-raised UU friends can and do cite experiences feeling terrified to come out and negative backlash they've received. As someone who is raised in arguably one of the most welcoming and safe spiritual spaces for queer people, I have felt so deeply grateful for my unfamiliarity with those experiences. Of course, there were hateful people in my life through school and extracurriculars, but none of them were close enough to me to penetrate the ambient love and acceptance I felt in my actual community. I remember coming out to my mom, Trina, when I was 17. I'd been publicly out as one flavor of queer or another since I was 11 or 12, but I really never thought to have a formal conversation with my parents about it. One afternoon, I asked my mom, ironically while she was cleaning out her closet, my favorite part of this story, is it okay if I go to gay prom with Kendra? My mom looked up at me and asked me, "Are you gay?" I nonchalantly answered, "Ish," and moved on with my day after she gave me the affirmative to go. There is no pomp and circumstance about that situation. I think we both just knew it was kind of a non-issue, like more of just like a confirmation, if anything else. And then I got to have another similarly unceremonious coming out when I was 19 years old with her, when I came out as non-binary, gender fluid, somewhere in that realm, on our way home from Kansas City's GA. And please don't worry about misgendering me. I use all pronouns, no issues there. So fast forward to June of 2020, when my other mom, Jillian came out as trans. Now, I feel like most of you who know my mom, Trina, are at least vaguely familiar with this story, so I'm not going to get into that aspect of things. But what sticks out to me is that the fear that Jill felt when she came out to my sister and I. And she did speak to me about this after the fact. She's not raised in any communities that had queer people, nor did she have a space where she felt truly safe or accepted growing up. When she did come out, she of course understood in theory that her pretty queer kids would love and accept her and have no issues, unconditionally. But there was still that creeping fear of rejection, that what if? I can't say with 100% certainty if I would have had a different reaction had I not been raised in this kind of space, but luckily I don't even have to entertain that idea because it just didn't happen. Besides my experiences with Jill, I can tell you countless stories of my friends' scared and life-altering experiences coming out to their friends and family, but I frankly don't feel entitled to repeat that because it's not my story. But what I will say is that the only person I know who has had a similar coming out to me is my friend who I was going to that gay prom with that day, almost a decade ago, Kendra. And she was also raised here, to be clear. All of this is to say that I love this community and what it has provided me with, as well as what it has spared me from. I am bold, some may argue too bold, but I do not tread this world with fear. I've never been afraid of who I am, and I know for a fact that it's because I come from this place, this experience, this community, and this home. Thanks.
That's my girl. Thank you for allowing us to share with you today. My family began attending in the late 50s before we had this church home, so my memories really start with the excitement of moving to this property. Hopes were high, and we kids were thrilled to be in such a grand space. I remember sporting my mom's handmade brand new checkered coat in the groundbreaking for the RE building that happened right out here. That's in the church archives someplace. I was super excited we would be holding classes here with a real playground. One of my favorite memories was the thrill of climbing the ladder up inside the steeple and our glee at being high up and hidden from view. Of course, that was before today's totally appropriate safety measures were in place. Other childhood activities involved searching for treasures in the resale shop that was right in here and sneaking tea with lots of sugar while our parents chatted at coffee hour. I was never much for school, and RE fit in that category. I was mainly in it for fun with the other kids, which probably drove our teachers nuts. The only curriculum I really remember hearing about was other religions and our junior high sex ed classes, now known as OWL. Ugh. I squirmed in embarrassment at the explanations drawn and labeled on the board in what is now Scott's office. I think about that every time I go in. Ugh. As a young teen, I was way more into speed skating than boys, but I'm thankful for the gift of the accurate knowledge and that my own kids went through the OWL curriculum. It's great information about something so essential to our well-being. These days, Mel keeps me up to speed in all areas of sexuality. She gave me permission to share that. And while writing this, I asked Siri if UUs have sex education for adults. Come to find out we do. There's 2 curriculums, one for adults and one for older adults. Fast forward to '74 when I moved to Colorado to ski my way through college, then to Denver when I began my career running McDonald's corporate restaurants. My boss became my best friend, and she took me to her Lutheran church where she and her family attended. I love the family part, and I did love the music, although I didn't share the beliefs and I was really uncomfortable with all the God talk. It just didn't make sense or science. So I began identifying as an atheist, much to her dismay. "Aren't you worried about going to hell?" she asked. I'm like, "Well, no, because I don't believe in hell." I did sing in their choir, though, which paid off later here. When I was back in town, I came with Mom to Eliot, but I didn't really feel connected except at our Christmas Eve services. I felt at home then when we lit our candles and sang Silent Night, and I got to listen to my mom's beautiful soprano descant soaring above. After 15 years out west, I moved back home and started my second career as a high school marketing education teacher. At the encouragement of my mom, who was Betty Marlowe, in case you knew her, I started singing in choir, and from there, I developed new friendships and nurtured old ones, like with Pam. I taught junior high RE for a couple of years and was able to facilitate and experience the church around the corner. That was eye-opening to me. I married, had a couple of daughters in quick succession because I was old, and we began bringing them to church. But I really dialed into our UU values when I was struggling in the Rockwood School District, how to best help my students that were coming out from the city, the volunteer transfer kids. Eliot was getting involved in race issues at that point, and that became a key factor in my deep dive into race and then again in gender issues. Raising both daughters, especially this one, also keeps me on my woke toes. I served on the search committee that led to us calling Barbara, then went on the board, learning about church governance and the delicate dance of keeping Eliot on track and thriving. I highly recommend both of these service opportunities. After retiring from education in 2015, I worked with Roger Birchhausen, a well-known minister in our faith, with the UU Partner Church Council. That opened my eyes to Unitarianism all over the world and allowed Mel and I to travel to our partner church in Transylvania. More recently, I've been part of Eliot's inaugural Wellspring program during the times I was going through a few major life changes. That program and group deepened my understanding of spirituality and helped me clarify the beliefs of my childhood. And it came with the gift of creating a strong bond between us. For all this and more, I am grateful I had the privilege of growing up UU here at Eliot. Thank you. Here at Eliot, we have a cherished tradition of supporting the community with our Share the Plate program. Each month, we donate half our offerings to various organizations doing work that furthers the values of our congregation. July's recipient is the St. Louis Area Diaper Bank, which strives to make positive health, social, and economic impacts, not only by providing diapers and period supplies, but by connecting recipients to needed resources to improve their lives. Unfortunately, no other public programs allow for the purchase of these items, so the need is critical. Please give generously. Aren't they? Will the greeters please come forward? Together, we'll dedicate these offerings with the words printed in your order of service. Join me now. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you.
I remember the very first time I set foot in Eliot's music room. It was a cool, clear September morning, and it would have been 1995 because I was 7 years old. My parents were not new to UUism, I'm third generation, but we were new to St. Louis and to Eliot. And Eliot, to my delight, had an elementary children's choir. That morning, the other kids and I were greeted by a smiling Steve Schenkel and Judy Lindquist, and we soon got to work rehearsing The Water is Wide for performance in an upcoming prelude. It was my first time ever singing in a real choir, and all I knew at the time was how much fun I was having. But it turned out that I had become instantly hooked on this art form for life. My childhood involvement in Eliot's music scene didn't stop there. I soon threw myself enthusiastically into the Christmas pageant production, playing a member of the Angel Chorus that first year. What would become the mid-2000s cluster of graduating classes contained many musically inclined kids. Myself, Jeffrey Chamberlain, Trip Gender, Amber Bain, Philip Rock, Ed Burke, and Holly Mead, to name just a few. Every late fall, all of us would begin to confer in rising anticipation. When would the call come? When would Reverend Janet Pillman call our parents' landlines, ask for us by name, and invite us to our role in this year's Christmas pageant? We were all friends, and we were all always excited for one another, no matter how we were each cast. In 4th grade, I was asked to play the second wise man, my very first solo singing role. Because the other two wise men were Holly Mead and Amber Bain, we immediately insisted on being called the three wise people, a request which Reverend Janet was delighted to grant. That settled, we buckled down to rehearse and perform. I still remember what it felt like the first time I stepped up and heard my voice ringing off those rafters alone. It was a thrill that later got me through my first tentative attempts at soloing in adulthood in 2018-19. And as today proves, it still hasn't entirely worn off. 2 years later, 6th grade, was the year of the Teen Girls Choir. It was early in Jan Chamberlain's tenure as music director, and that Christmas she started a treble choir for middle school girls who had aged out of children's choir. I had been unable to fit school choir into my schedule that year, so I had been without a singing ensemble for months. Once again, I walked into the music room, and choral singing refused to let me go. Under Jan's careful guidance, we sang a lovely 2-part arrangement of A la Nanita, one December prelude. When Jan no longer had the time to continue offering the choir, I finally caved and tried out for the St. Louis Children's Choirs, a decision which ultimately put me on the path to become a music teacher. Looking back nearly 28 years after my first step into Eliot's music room, I can point to it as a vitally important site in my development into who I am today. It was no coincidence that Jan was the second phone call I made, only after my parents, when I decided to move home to St. Louis in my mid-20s. I knew that by returning to Eliot, I'd be picking up the thread of a cherished part of my childhood in one of the most important places where I first learned to call myself a musician.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Ranney, and I go by Eliot, my mom's maiden name, and my stage name, so it's spelled with 2 L's, 2 T's, pronounced the same way. And so apparently my family was one of the original members of Eliot Chapel, and and hearing Michael's version of things, it all comes around full circle. The first location of the chapel that I remember was located on Ballas Road, south and east of Darty Ferry, and I'm not sure if that is the same place where they wanted to build the church. So, and that's would Ralph, my dad, would drive us up a gravel road through a small forest into a large clearing where a wood frame building stood. Behind was a small outbuilding for daycare, and I don't know if it was attached or not, but and I was 3 years old, about 1956, and I don't know if a Sunday school was organized. This was a very young congregation at the time. In this time period, casual attire was not the norm. Men wore suits and ties, women were decked out in full regalia, and some sporting little hats. That's what I recall. What I recall of the daycare scene was lots of toys, picture books, and Disney records to listen to. My significant memory of this time period was the Christmas party. There was a stage with a curtain and a large floor in front with long tables and chairs. We all shared a potluck dinner, a tradition I grew to think of as uniquely Unitarian. After the feast and tables cleared, a choir formed on stage singing carols. It was during this concert I first heard the song 12 Days of Christmas. That, for me, was magical. And I'm not sure about something, but I was told that the chapel building burned down, and not long after, the minister left, leaving a void, and I was told he retired, and I don't know about that, if that was true or not. And a committee was formed. An educated guess on my part, Unitarians love committees. Webster Kitchell was hired, and the chapel moved to the Kirkwood YMCA, and then the congregation bought this older church, and here we are. And Steve Tanaka, I remember your dad, and he would do the same kind of thing for the kids that was done here. And at one time he told a science fiction story, and that was, for me, that was significant, and I was hooked on sci-fi ever after. So I appreciate that, and I remember your dad fondly. What a wonderful person. So that's about it. Thank you. Thank you.
church of my childhood. The church of my childhood stands proud and strong. From the cradle to the grave, it is many things to each of us. It is care and safety when we first come into these walls, and again as we stand together in protest and action against injustice. It is knowledge and understanding as we learn about our faith and others too. And it is discovery as we realize how great our faith really is. It is fun and delight when we play together as children, still is. It is uplifting as our musicians and artists lovingly share their talent, and beautiful harmony as we sing together. It is comfortable closeness as friendships blossom, and delight when we discover new people who just get us. It is spiritual joy when an unexpected rush of emotion leaps inside us in response to a reading, a prayer, a sermon, a song. It is wonder and appreciation as we roam the beautiful woods and meadows of our bird-freed lands. It is homecoming when we return from short or long absences, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. It is struggle and work as we tackle difficult issues, and it is compromise and satisfaction as together we find new ways to reach our goals. Above all, it is challenging as we lean into making our church and our world a better place for all. And it is soul satisfying because we know it's the right and only thing to do. In closing, Eliot is the place where our faith is nurtured and deepened with each passing year. For this great gift, we are grateful beyond measure. Amen and blessed be. We're going to skip our closing hymn today. I want to thank you for joining us as we shared our stories with all of our wonderful Elioteers. It's been a fun walk down memory lane. Now, as we extinguish this chalice, we carry the light within us until we are together again.